Welcome to Beyond Survival, Triumphantly You, a space where extraordinary women share their journeys from struggle to strength. I'm Gwen Hinrichs, and in each episode, we sit down with survivors, fighters, and thrivers, women who have not only conquered breast cancer, but have turned their battles into purpose and empowerment. Their stories will uplift, inspire, and remind you that survival isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Join us every Thursday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Beyond Survival, Triumphantly You. Subscribe now and be a part of the journey. Hi, welcome to Beyond Survival, Triumphantly You. Today, we are joined by a remarkable woman whose journey through breast cancer has become a beacon of light for others navigating life after diagnosis and after treatment. Rachel was diagnosed with breast cancer on December 2nd, 2021, and what followed was more than just treatment. It was a deep personal transformation. She committed herself to not only healing physically, but also to reclaiming her peace of mind, her presence, and ultimately her joy. Now, Rachel is using her experience to guide other women through one of the most overlooked chapters of survivorship, the after. She supports those who feel like life has fallen apart and who are afraid to embrace happiness again, and who are struggling to feel at home in their own skin. Through workshops, coaching, and community, Rachel helps women pick up the pieces and find a new, empowered normal. Her mission is both personal and powerful, and I'm honored to share this space with her today. Rachel Mechley-Hopkins, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Gwen. That was a beautiful introduction, and I am honored to be here. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you. So, Rachel, you described your cancer journey as a time of learning to live in the present and to not let fear take over. What helped you most in your shift? And where was there a specific moment in time when you realized you were no longer guided by fear?
I would say that for so many years of my life, I was guided by, my anxiety and my nervous and worried feelings. My stomach would be in knots so much that I would wind up in the bathroom a lot, and having all kinds of stomach issues. Sometimes I'd miss school because of it when I was a kid. So anyway, at some point in my life, I realized that I was doing all of this to myself. It was all just based on my thinking, my thoughts. So when my daughter was in high school, and then a little bit while she was in college, I would worry about her well-being. Excuse me, but at some point, I really had to decide and realize that if there was nothing to worry about, I wasn't going to worry. So unless I had a real reason or a real cause to worry, that I was just going to leave the worry on the back burner. I was going to, look at the facts and live in the moment. So that's what I got pretty good at doing. But even though I was doing that and, getting pretty good at not worrying about things, I certainly got my diagnosis and, sorry about that, that did hit me quite hard when I got my diagnosis. And so I'm not, in any way saying it's easy to not let that happen. But, pretty much like other people, like many other people, I was worried about having a tumor inside of me, and I wanted it out. So I guess it was after the shock of it all and, kind of going back to living in the present. I realized that I wanted to be more proactive with my health instead of reactive. And so, in doing that, I found that I was able to be more present in spending time with my family, my friends, people who mattered to me. And then I guess the specific moment that I realized that I was no longer guided by fear, in regards to my diagnosis was pretty much when I felt brave enough to fire my surgeon. I fired my surgeon because she lied to me. And that's another story that I'd be happy to share with you if we have time at the end, but or if you want to know now, either way. But anyway, I
I do.
felt brave
I
enough.
want to know. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was brave enough to fire my surgeon. I think that's when I realized I was no longer in the grasp or the grip of fear because I could let something go and feel confident in moving forward without that. and in finding a replacement. So what happened was, let's see. So I had gone in, to the surgeon already. Everything was in the works, in progress. And I had my lumpectomy on November 29th of 2021. And then like a month later, I'm not sure why she didn't do them together. I think some surgeons do them together and some don't. But so I had my lumpectomy first. A month later, I went in for what was considered to be a sentinel lymph node biopsy. And so she told me, a couple of weeks ahead of time that she was going to inject a blue dye and that she was, that I might pee blue for, I don't know, days or however long, and that my breast would be blue for a long period of time. And so I, got to the surgery for the sentinel lymph node biopsy. I didn't have any prep ahead of time. There was no injection the day before. There was no injection an hour or two before the surgery. I got into the surgery, and then afterward, when she woke me up, I, found out that the surgery had only lasted 45 minutes. Nowhere in my chart did it say that it was a sentinel lymph node biopsy. It called it a lymph node dissection. And so, I had a drain, and then like 7 days later, I went back to get the drain removed. And I said to her, I said, hey, I didn't pee blue. I didn't have a blue breast, from the injection or anything. She said, well, I put it in there. So she didn't bother to go look at her file to confirm whether or not she did do the dye. And it's my understanding that a 45-minute surgery doesn't give the dye long enough time to travel from where she injects it into the sentinel node. So she lied to me, and I just couldn't, my only regret then would be having allowed her to do two surgeries. But I couldn't continue on with her. I couldn't continue on with somebody who was just going to be blatant and say, well, I put it in there, and I know she didn't.
Right,
Not that I'm a
right.
surgeon or anything, but
What did she do?
well, I think she cut me open and pulled out 7 lymph nodes, 4 of which were positive. And then she stitched me back up, after putting a drain in, and then that was it.
Wow. And it
Yeah.
didn't happen at the same time as your lumpectomy, which is
Nope.
so strange to me.
Nope. I
Well,
agree.
I'm glad you fired her.
Yeah.
And that shows to the audience and the people who are dealing with all of this that if something doesn't feel right, sound right, look right, you can get a second opinion and you
Mhm.
should. And you can say goodbye to your doctors if you don't trust them. You have to be able to trust your
Yes.
practitioners.
I agree. And we're
Um,
putting our hands in their lives, but also they are still only human.
mhm, absolutely.
Yeah.
What was your um what was your treatment like beyond the lumpectomy? Did you do chemo and radiation? I didn't know what your treatment was.
Yeah, I did. Let's see. So I did the two surgeries, and then after that, they set me up for radiation. I was initially told that I would do 3 weeks of radiation, then I was told 5 weeks of radiation, and then I was told 6 weeks of radiation. So by the time I got to stage 3A, that was my diagnosis, then they said 6 weeks of radiation. And I said, wait a second, I understand why we're not doing 3 weeks, but how do we go from 5 to 6 weeks? And so the radiation oncologist explained to me that over in the UK, they're having some success with 4 weeks of radiation, and that he would give me a slightly higher dose each session, but that it would only be 4 weeks instead of 6 weeks at a lower dose per session. But then he also explained that I would have fewer grays overall. So the radiation exposure would be less in the 4 weeks with a slightly higher dose than it would have been in 6 weeks with a slightly lower dose.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
Okay. New developments all the time,
yeah,
but it's always been radiation and chemo. So,
Yeah. And then for
sure.
chemo, well, so
Yeah.
for chemo, they did the oncotype test and that came back at 19. And she did the mammoth print test and that she said that she would put more faith in. So she said if your mammoth print test comes back high, we're probably going to recommend chemo. But if it comes back low, it will all depend. We'll look at everything and then we'll make a decision. So the mammoth print came back low and the oncotype again was 19. And so my oncologist literally said to me, I know I won't make any money off of you by saying this, but we don't recommend that you do chemo for only a 3% benefit.
Wow. I know I won't make any money saying this. Wow,
Yeah.
that's crazy. What was your mama print? Do you remember? Mine was
It came
26.
back. Yeah, I think the mammoth print, this is my understanding. I don't even know that those exact results were shared with me, like on the form or the page that it came back on, like the oncotype was. But the mammoth print, it's my understanding, is either very low, low, high, or very high.
Hmm.
So I think that is the risk of it recurring.
Right.
And so,
Mine was high.
was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes, mine was
mine was
low.
high.
Yeah.
Yay. Thank God.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that yours was very high.
Yeah, me too.
But you're here. You're here.
I am.
Yes.
Um, so many survivors say that the end of treatment is actually when the hardest part begins. What did picking up the pieces look like for you personally?
So before I answer this one, I just want to say to the audience that I am not a doctor. Obviously do your own exploration prior to adding anything new to your current protocol or, talk to your doctors and all of that good stuff before making any changes. But, because these are personal choices, so what I've done is maybe different from what other people have done, even in a similar situation. So I spoke with other people. I did some reading and I, did obviously a lot of thinking. I don't usually just jump into a decision. It was a rushed thing for me in that initial lumpectomy. From the moment that she told me that she thought it was cancer, I think 12 days later I was getting a lumpectomy. So that was pretty fast for me. Um, so basically what I suggest to my clients is to put a plan in place incorporating Western medicine where necessary, and then add to that plan wherever you see any lapses. So if somebody has a plan already and they're feeling kind of left out in the cold for a little while, there are other alternatives that they can consider adding in there. Um, and a lot of times, I think it's really good and valuable if somebody can afford to do it, but also check with your insurance, see if your insurance covers any of these types of people in your area. But basically, you can find support through integrative, functional, holistic, or naturopathic doctors or nurse practitioners who specialize in breast cancer prevention. And then typically, when we find these solutions outside of Western medicine, again, they're not generally covered by insurance, but some components of them typically are. So maybe like the lab work might be covered by your insurance, or some of the if there are any prescriptions or whatever, maybe the hourly billing by the doctor might be covered by the insurance. So it's all worth looking into and exploring. So for me specifically, what picking up the pieces looked like was Terra testing, which is, checking for circulating tumor DNA and circulating tumor cells. Thermography once a year. Prunuvo MRI. It's if for yeah. Did you were gonna get ask something?
Yeah, what is that?
Prunuvo is so I'm not sure when it first appeared in the United
Hmm.
States. But basically it's Prunuv, V as in Victor, O. And so anyone can go to Prunuvo.com and they offer an MRI that is apparently more um, accurate than the MRIs that we get in the hospital, or at a facility, a center, general facility or MRI center. And the reason why it's more, and you don't need the contrast. So the
Oh,
reason why it's more accurate is because you spend more time in the machine. So I know some people are, kind of fearful. We can get into that later, but you're in the machine for a longer period of time. So because of that, if you're in there for almost an hour, it can pick up a tumor the size of a half a centimeter. So
it's
that's really
incredible.
small. That is incredible. So, and it's not cheap. Again, it's something that you would want to check with your insurance for. Right now, I think the cost is $2,500 for the MRI, but then somebody reads it and they get back to you, they give you their findings, and then, advise you on, reaching out to your own doctor and, you might want to do this, that, or the other thing or whatever. So, and I think they also are happy to set up, a conversation or a consult with your doctor if it's necessary. So, Prunuvo MRI, eating right, getting exercise, forgiving other people, and not forgetting to forgive myself. I think it's important that we forgive ourselves for things because everybody makes such a big deal about forgiving other people. And the reason that it's so beneficial to forgive other people is because it lifts a load or a burden off of us, off of our soul, off of our spirit. But then I think so many people leave out forgiving ourselves as well. So I think that's really important. And then meditation, supplementing when necessary. And then I also utilize bioidentical hormones. Um, let's see. So there's other areas that I'm also willing to kind of look into and explore. For me, I have this desire to never stop learning. If 2 years I learn that there's something else that would be amazing regarding prevention, I'm going to look into it and explore it and possibly do it. I'm not just saying, okay, you know what? I'm done with Western medicine. I'm just going to move forward and live my life and not make any changes.
Did you have any pushback from your traditional doctors, your traditional Western medicine doctors when you were exploring these other options?
Yeah, so let's see. The thermography, that in case the listeners don't know, that is an infrared test. So they look at you with an infrared camera to see if you have any inflammation or hot spots in your body. So basically, what happened with me in my situation is I've been getting mammograms since my mid 30s. And the first mammogram radiologist who read that, the first one I ever had done, and the radiologist said to me, finding a tumor in your breast would be like finding a white marble in a bowl of milk. It would be very difficult. And it's because
Oh,
my breasts were so dense. But
oh,
yet what happened was there were calcifications that were spotted on that MR, on that mammogram. And so they sent me a letter in the mail saying, hey, it's likely benign, but come back in 6 months anyway, just in case. So I went back 6 months later. And then 6 months after that, it was my annual mammogram again. So for a while, I was on repeat of going in every 6 months, and I didn't want to keep doing that. I didn't think that that was safe. I didn't think that was good for me. Um, so then fast forward, and I think 18 months prior, because I started just putting it off for a year. I wasn't going to go in every 6 months. I think I dropped it to 9 months for a little while. Then I went to 12 months. And at this one point, I went 18 months without a mammogram. And I wasn't trying to push it out. My mom had died of lung cancer prior. I had a year of frozen shoulder. I'm sure some of our listeners can relate to that. So all these things were going on in my life. And what prompted me to go get a mammogram was because a doctor had read my thermography and he said, it's a 15-minute reading. You're just there. It's a very short period of time, and you're just there to get all the information you can from the doctor who's reading it. So you're not having a two-way conversation with this person. You paid $75 for a 15-minute consultation. You're going to get everything you can from him regarding your results. So, he's going through this list of things that he wanted to say to me. And at some point he said, "And what's going on with your right breast?" And I knew that something was going on with my right breast, but again, I thought it was a fluid-filled cyst. I had put that on the back burner. I had other things that were more important and more pressing going on in my life, in my mind. So I then told my oncologist or my OBGYN that I had this issue and could she see me? So she did. She saw me within like a day, I think, of me calling her. She made an urgent appointment. I went in to see her. Then she sent me to that surgeon. That surgeon did a mammogram, and the mammogram didn't pick up a 3 centimeter tumor.
Wow.
So it's like 1.57 inches, so it's closer to 2 inches.
Significant.
Yeah, and it didn't pick it up. So then the ultrasound didn't pick it up either. And so I, after I fired that one surgeon, and this is a long roundabout answer for your question, but after I fired that surgeon, I did find another surgeon who would be willing to follow me. And I explained to her that due to my breast density, I had no desire to do any more mammograms. And then she looked at me and very sincerely said, "It's your body." So I felt really supported by her saying that. Um, but since then, I did tell her what I would do instead, that I would do an MRI every year, 6 months later, an ultrasound, that I'm following up with the thermography, I'm doing that, Terra, all of this stuff. I told her what I would do, and she seemed to be agreeable to all of that. She did say to me at our last visit last year, "You still don't feel like you want to do a mammogram?" I said, "No, I really don't." She said, "Okay, well, as long as you don't mind, then I'm going to keep asking." So that's not what she had said the first time, but yeah, that's okay. She can keep asking and I'll keep saying no. And I did tell her that if she had a really compelling reason why I needed to do one, then at
Mhm.
that time I would consider it and I might consider doing it. So yeah, it's just, basically you just have to be your own advocate and stand up for yourself. And obviously we don't have medical degrees. So we have to work with our doctors to come up with the right game plan that is, appropriate for each one of us, like a fingerprint.
You seem to have tons of information, tons of stuff that would be helpful to other women who are looking to find alternatives to traditional medical treatment. And I think that's amazing because there are things that I haven't heard of either. I had a Signatera test, which tests for cells in your rogue cancer cells that might be floating around in your body. I did have that. But I never heard some of the things that you're talking about. So I think that there's a lot of things you can offer women who are looking for alternatives, and that's that's amazing. Um, you work with women who feel afraid to allow joy back into their lives. What do you think causes the fear to take hold so deeply, and how do you gently guide them towards healing?
So the way I see it, I think when we're diagnosed, it's kind of like being hit by a Mack truck. You just are what a deer in headlights. You're stunned, you're shocked. And then I think after some of that shock wears off, they start to feel betrayed, like their body let them down. And then I think a lot of women also experience PTSD from their diagnosis. And maybe they haven't gotten any help with that yet. And I think they're afraid to let their guard down. And then I think another piece that really plays a strong role in this fear is that they haven't taken the time to look at their root causes. So, why was I diagnosed with this in the first place? And it's unfortunate that Western medicine doesn't tend to look at root causes besides genetics. Um, and I think um, the last podcast you did with Vera, she was saying that 5% of the genetics only is responsible for 5% of the cases. And then there was this woman who I was working with, and she's a holistic doctor. And she said that some doctors will say something. Well, I actually asked her, I said, well, my doctor said it was like, up to 15%. And she said, well, the 5% is truly passed down through the genes, but the remaining 6 to 15 or 6 to 18% are actually our own DNA that has turned the switches on or off in the wrong way based on our internal environment. And our internal environment is a result of our external environment. So I think, to look at these potential root causes um, is so important because it can help us navigate the future on a more solid footing. If just as an example, if somebody told you that your cancer was caused by smelling violets, then we would say, oh, I'm not going to smell violets anymore. I'll smell other flowers, but I'm going to stay away from violets. So basically, it's just a way of us saying, okay, you know what, this is a potential cause for my diagnosis. I'm going to avoid that in the future, or I'm going to, change it. Like obviously, we can't avoid water. So if we find out that our water source could have been a potential cause, we can change our water source. If we find out that a potential cause in my life, I had some childhood trauma. So I believe that childhood trauma can lead to disease. I've heard other people say it. I believe it to be true. So I have worked with a therapist to work through some of my childhood trauma. Just things like that. So I gently, to gently guide the women towards healing, I've developed a program that leads to acceptance and understanding of where this person is right now and how we can, move forward. So we do some non-medical exploration to try to find out why they may have been diagnosed in the first place. And then this allows them to become, more proactive in the steps that they take moving forward to hopefully prevent a new diagnosis.
And that helps, I think, with the first point that you had made about women forgiving themselves, because so many of us believe it's something that we did to ourselves. And, while that may be slightly true because it is, somewhat lifestyle associated, um, we tend to blame ourselves for our breast cancer. And frankly, a lot of other people do too.
Mhm.
You'll hear from other women who might not have gone through this with some blame rhetoric. I don't know, oh, the eating sugar and the white flour and all that, and drinking alcohol. And by saying that to somebody, cancer is caused by sugar. You have to say to yourself, how much sugar have I eaten my whole life? Well, pounds of it,
Yeah,
of course. And
yeah.
so that gives a self-blame sort of attitude. And I think that your approach steps beyond that and helps women, start to look at a way to direct our focus in a positive manner, which is away from self-blame, but into a solutions mindset.
Yes. Yes, and that's so important because you're right. There is a lot of self-blame that goes on. And I don't know if everyone has heard of Maya Angelou, but she said, when we know better, we do better.
Mm,
So
yeah,
none of anything that I did in the past am I here to blame myself for. I'm just simply deciding, okay, I'm not going to smell purple flowers anymore. I'm not going to smell violets anymore. I'm going to move on from here.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice approach. Um, Loving a post-cancer body can be incredibly difficult. I know I had a difficult time looking in the mirror. Um, and you had mentioned before I was it's hard to, look in the mirror, bald head, green face, which I'm looking sort of green in this light. But, um, you know, new body, new breasts, new shape, being tired. How do you encourage self-love and loving one's own body again.
Yeah, and the way I kind of look at it is I didn't always like what I saw in the mirror prior to my diagnosis. It's just, something is uneven. One of my breasts was always smaller than the other one, or, my hips, whatever, just different parts of our bodies that we can kind of become dissatisfied with. So then you add a diagnosis onto it, and that obviously makes it even more challenging. If we were already dissatisfied with what we saw in the mirror before, we're going to be even more dissatisfied. So what I kind of realized over the years, since becoming more spiritual, is that our bodies really are a vessel. And our body is something to carry our brain around in, to carry our mind around, to get us from one place to another. And if we didn't have this beautiful vessel, we wouldn't be able to communicate, with other people, with other souls with bodies, So that's kind of how I look at it. I look at it as though I'm a soul with a body. And so knowing that kind of breaks it down to the facts. Like I have a body. This is the body that I'm existing in. I can do the best I can with this body. And I didn't in the past. When I was a kid, I would put a heaping teaspoon of sugar on my Cheerios. We thought it was fine. Our parents did it, or, whatever. It was no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so just, that's, I think the first thing is just understanding that the body is a vessel that carries us around and it carries our soul around. And then when we look at it from that perspective, we can break it down to the facts. So it's kind of like if you have a fender bender on your car, your car fender is dented on the front right. Um, yeah, we might not think that it's attractive, but the car can still get us around from one place to the next. And at some point when we can go in and repair the fender. Now, obviously, we can't always repair our physical changes. Some of us get scars that we don't find appealing. Some people go out and get tattoos to cover them up, and that's an option. Some people, look at them as battle wounds. It's just all in how we decide to look at it. If I look at the breast in the mirror that I have, then I could choose to feel injured each time I look at it. I could choose to feel less than each time I look at it. Or I can look at my breast in the mirror and say, my breast has two lines that have remained since surgery. And I have a flat area underneath my right breast that really is like my breast is missing, almost like something kind of took a bite out of that area of my breast. It's
Mm-hmm.
just not even there anymore. So, I could look at my breast in the mirror and instead of saying something like, what an ugly mess this is, or, I can't believe this happened to me, instead I can simply say, my breast has two lines that are a result of the surgery and the shrinkage from radiation. I mean, that's just the facts,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
if we're just looking at the facts, it should, we leave the emotion out of it. Then we can look at the facts of what is going on and what has happened. I have a body, it has this appearance,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still here and I'm still walking around, and, I can be present with my family and friends. So I think that women really feel estranged from their bodies when they still can't look in the mirror, even though it's been some long period of time after their surgery. Um, so some women, when they catch a glimpse of it, they immediately feel bad. They, feel badly about themselves, about the surgery, about their new appearance. If someone makes a comment to them, a lot of times they might react. They'll feel angry, sad, or humiliated. So, the way I kind of look at it is like, it's no wonder that cancer can feel like a lonely place for women because we just feel like we're out on an island sometimes and there's just no real support around us. But my advice to these beautiful souls is to focus on the facts of their situation. And there are steps that we take to do this. So once we start to look at the facts, it can feel a lot less daunting to look in the mirror eventually. We don't have to look in it today, but
Mhm.
eventually we can do it. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not easy, but I believe that it begins with acceptance, as most painful things do.
Yeah, that's a nice approach. I like it, very practical, and I like and very mindful, and I like the fact of practicing non-judgment on ourselves. That's a very good approach. Right now, I'd like to take a break so I can show my skincare line, which is how this show is brought to us.
Beautiful.
Has your skin been through hell and back? I'm Gwen Hinrichs, founder of Blissfully Bare Skincare. After my fight with breast cancer, my skin changed, and so did my standards. I needed skincare I could actually trust. And while there were plenty of products out there, I couldn't really be sure they were safe for skin that had been through so much like mine. So I created Blissfully Bare, clean, effective, bioactive skincare made with wonderful ingredients like snow mushroom for deep hydration, bromelain for gentle exfoliation, and chamomile and cucumber to calm and soothe and restore your skin. No phthalates, no parabens, no hormone disruptors ever. Ready to feel good in your skin again? Click the link in the comments to shop our beautiful collection, because nothing compares to Bare. Okay, we're back, and I have a few more questions. So, Rachel, I'd like you to tell our audience how they can get in touch with you, and um, how you can help them, and what things are you doing, what kinds of programs are you running, and where can they find you if they need you?
Yeah, let's see. So I have a website called rachelhopkinscoaching.com. And then I'm also available on Facebook as Rachel Mechley-Hopkins. And let's see. I have an email. It's CCS, C as in Charlie, C as in Charlie, S as in Sam, at rachelhopkinscoaching.com. So anybody can reach out to me any of those places. And I also have text ability at area code 513-202-6429. So anybody can reach out to me in those ways, and we can get something going. The way I help people are I have one-to-one coaching that I offer. I also offer group coaching. There's benefits to both, and some people like to combine both. I also have a community, it's a free Facebook group, and I just recently changed the name of it. So let me just pull it up here real quick because I don't remember it. Let's see here. So it is called, um, let me guess. It is sorry, I should have had that already ready for you. And of
It's
course
okay.
it's not
I'll run it through the captions as well.
okay. So yeah, it's called breast cancer. No, it's called Beyond Breast Cancer. I think that's what it is. Beyond Breast Cancer Tools for Thriving. I think that's what it
Okay,
is.
as soon as you get sure of that, send that to me and I'll run it
Okay.
through the video.
Okay, I sure will. Thank you.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so you do one-on-one coaching, you do group coaching, and somebody can just reach out and get in touch with you and say, "Hey, I'm going through this and that," and you make yourself available to communicate. They can connect with other women on your groups and on Facebook, and so that's wonderful. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us here today, and I so
Mhm.
appreciate it. I love interviewing women like you who have so much to share with others who are going through what we went through, and it's so, so important. So thank you for joining us. And I hope you enjoy your skincare that I'm going to send you.
Wonderful. I can't wait. I'm excited about it. And thank you so much for having me here, Gwen. I really do appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.